What we'd like to do now is to launch a poll. So our audio and video supporters, can you please launch the poll? Before we do that, I also want to mention that this meeting is now live.
Right. So just to test the technology, could I would ask committee to take up the draft agenda. So we'll use this opportunity to test the polling system. So could people vote now?
And this obviously is also to adopt the draft agenda for this meeting. And you see obviously on your upper screen the time the clock is running.
Yeah, this is very good, Stefan, because mine's not working. But
The NATO PA voting team will, in fact, assist you if you have a problem with the voting.
yeah, mine's just come up saying only eligible participants can vote.
You should be able to vote.
No. No, it's still not working.
I think we can now close the vote. And then after this, our colleagues will help you fixing a problem with your voting rights.
So, Stefan, can you announce the result if we've got it?
We have the agenda is adopted. There was nobody against it. We have two people voting in favor, nobody abstained, and nobody voted no.
Oh, right.
So we have the necessary quorum.
Yeah. Right. So can we come on to a summary of our previous committee meetings? The meeting at the 2019 annual session in London and our two online meetings in July and September. Are there any comments or objections? Any comments, Stefan?
Well, if no member raises a comment, that should be adopted by acclamation.
Yeah. So we'll just we'll test the system again. So we'll take that as being those being accepted. Can we now consider the comments on the NATO Secretary General on the resolution adopted by our Assembly last year? Any comments?
Yeah, we don't adopt it. It's just comments, and if members want to make some comments.
Do we have any, Stefan?
No, if nobody requests to speak, then we have nobody to comment.
So we shall move on to the next item on the agenda, which is consideration of the revised draft general report on hypersonic weapons.
Sorry, we have Susan Davis is currently in the vote in the U.S. House of Congress, but our other rapporteur is ready to present his report.
So can we change the agenda then and move to the consideration of revised draft report on Subcommittee on Technology and Trends on Urban Warfare? And could I ask Philip Michel to take the floor?
Philip, if you... Okay, great. Here he comes now.
He comes, good.
I hope you can all hear me. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chairman. Dear colleagues, I'm very happy to be able to introduce you to this urban warfare report. The report was slightly revised since our last meeting in July to reflect the excellent comments and proposals at the session. First of all, allow me to recall the main elements of this report. By 2050, almost 70% of the world's population will live in urban areas. Given the persistent instability of the eastern and southern flanks of NATO, it is most probable that future conflicts in which Allied forces will have to intervene will be in urban areas. As a reminder, by 2030, 41 megalopolis will be listed in the world, over 10 million inhabitants. 2030 is, of course, tomorrow. Look at the experts group producing the NATO 2030 report. Urban areas are a complex environment for modern forces. These urban areas are difficult infrastructure and terrain, very highly densely populated. The presence of civilians and vital infrastructures make military planning and targeting more difficult. Of course, protection of civil population and the respect of the international humanitarian law are also priorities for NATO forces, but our adversaries do not abide by the same standards. The NAC has introduced in 2019 a global concept for joint military operations in urban areas. The STO, the Science and Technology Organization of NATO, has also identified the most important technologies to fulfill the needs of urban warfare. Preparation for future urban combat calls for adapting training and exercise. The success of future urban warfare will depend upon our ability to control information in cyberspace as well. Emerging technologies can help NATO forces deal with the challenges of urban combat areas. Information technology will be absolutely essential for command and control purposes. New types of sensors and UAVs should allow us to have a better knowledge of the situation. Robotics and new material will allow for greater and better force protection. And AI, artificial intelligence, will also augment the capacity to compile, sort, list, rank, and circulate information. Now, technological progress is good for us, but it's also good for the adversaries. Non-state actors, terrorist actors like Daesh, or the insurgencies in eastern Ukraine are already exploiting new technologies using drones. For instance, allow me to now highlight a number of the changes that were incorporated in the report since our last meeting. The revised report underlines that biometrics could allow us to better identify hostile individuals. In the Defense Against Terror, the NCIA, the NATO Information and Communication Agency, is in charge of developing an automated system for biometrics identification called NABIS. Moreover, the report also notes that the use of artificial intelligence and autonomous system calls for or brings about a number of ethical and legal matters and questions, even if these systems could enhance NATO forces in urban warfare. Several allies have already taken initiative to defend an ethical use of these systems. The French Ministry of the Armed Forces published in 2019 a number of guidelines for controlled artificial intelligence for the purpose of defense. Similarly, the US Department of Defense has published in 2019 as well ethical principles for artificial intelligence. Now, faced with the challenges of urban warfare, I would like to put forward several conclusions. First of all, allies should promote the development of new technologies that improve situational awareness as well as provide for greater command and control. Allies should call on to the scientific and technological community of NATO, STO, through its Organization for Science and Technology, STO. Secondly, NATO should use communication platforms to its own advantage and strengthen information actions in order to gain the trust of local populations. Thirdly, allies should work together to the implementation of international binding standards for an ethical use of artificial intelligence and UAV systems in a military framework. Finally, allies should also cooperate to follow up and regulate the use and exporting of dual use technology, given the problem they may cause on the battlefield. By the way, let me mention in passing a report that we had drafted at NPA, including the report by Tan Marino about 2 years ago that dealt with a similar topic. Dear colleagues, new technologies can indeed enhance our capability to operate in urban warfare situations, but they also bring about a number of challenges. We can answer these challenges by strengthening the capability of our forces and gain better situational awareness in urban warfare. And in concluding, I would like to thank our research assistants, including Safin Dinkel, for the excellent cooperation in the drafting of this report. And before giving you the floor, Mr. Chairman, I would like to say that I've received a number of suggestions from the Ukrainian delegation to enhance the draft report. These proposals underline that NATO should take into account the experience and expertise of partner nations, and that there should be an exchange of experiences between NATO and partner nations in urban warfare. The experience of Ukraine in terms of Russian cyber attack could be very useful indeed. Another suggestion was made, which was to work in close cooperation with partner countries in order to prevent proliferation of dual-use technology. I think that these additions are useful for the report, and I'd like to thank the Ukrainian delegation for these very constructive proposals. And myself and a number of colleagues who are members of the NATO-Ukraine interparliamentary councils, where we were all able to understand how crucial this additional information is. So out of the 8 proposals for amendment that were put to me by our colleagues from Ukraine, 7 have actually been accepted and allowed us to slightly revisit the draft report. Let me thank you for listening to me, and of course, I'm open to a discussion on the draft report. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe Michel, for your presentation. Can I now open up for comments? Stefan, do we have any?
No, there are no additional comments other than the one that the rapporteur has received before from the Ukrainian delegation. So what we could do, unless there are others who want to speak out and have some suggestions, proceed to the vote.
Yes, can we proceed to the vote? So is the vote open, Stefan?
Could you please lance the vote for the report of Mr. Kleisbauer? It will come up in a second.
Je ne peux pas voter.
Do we have the vote yet, Stefan?
Can I ask colleagues again just to start the vote on Mr. Michel Kleisbauer's report? I don't see it either on my screen yet.
No.
while we're waiting for some people, in fact, to start the vote, I saw a question that how do you vote? When you look to the right side of your screen, you actually see several buttons, and one of them is polls. It now blinks red, at least on my screen. You click on that button, and then you actually have a menu on top. You have on the left side polls. If there has been a change, you see a red line on top, and on the right, poll results. If you go to polls, click on that, then you can actually you see poll number 2. And if you click on that, you have a drop-down menu that shows you on vote 2, V2. You have yes, no, abstain. So you click one of those, and when you've done that, you actually click below and press submit. There's normally a 1 minute time limit for a vote, but as we actually start a little bit later, we can certainly go a little bit beyond this 1 minute.
Mine is now working, so.
Maybe we can now actually proceed and close the vote. And then when you see a red dot on top of the polls now, you can actually see the poll results. You click on polls again, then you go to poll results. There's a red line above it. And then you see that we have 9 people who voted. We have 9 people who support the report. Nobody voted against, and nobody abstained. So Mr. Chairman, this is the result.
Thank you. It might be an idea, Stefan, just perhaps send an email around people for tomorrow's meetings in case they have any problems, or ask them to contact if they have any problems with the voting system. But can I thank Philip Michel for his report and agree that report. Are we now in a position to have Susan Davis?
I do not see her on the list. But actually, we have some. Maybe she is, in fact, because I see someone from her office. And he make it connected. Just a sec, please.
Could I ask people just be patient while we try and contact with Susan?
Could I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman?
You can.
We have, in fact, for tomorrow planned that you would inform about the planned activities for 2021. While we are waiting for our General Rapporteur, maybe you actually want just advance that, so we actually make best use of the time and have a little bit more time tomorrow.
Yes. Yes. Could I just go through what our plans are for next year? And the focus of the committee's work will be on three areas: biological weapons, which will be really advancement from my special report on COVID. And the other area which we've obviously touched on today in the Joint Committee will be the one on space. There is also a report on building really on our very successful meeting last year in Singapore.
Nous avions une très belle réunion l'année dernière à Singapour.
With Asian partners. Now, one of the proposals on that was a visit to Japan. We may have to put that back to later, so we may well have to look at when we do that, and if that has to be postponed, that committee report for next year, we may have to think of another report to cover that area. Members will remember that we were supposed to be going to Turkey this year, and I think as a committee we were still very keen to go there. And again, that is something we will have to keep under review for next year, depending on the situation with COVID. But I know both our Turkish delegation, the Turkish delegation, and members were very keen to go there. The other visits around the space inquiry were a visit to Spain or France or Germany. And again, I think in the standing committee yesterday, again, all visits will obviously have to be under review depending on what happens, the situation around COVID. But that's what we would like to consider for next year. I think certainly the report on biological defence is obviously going to be topical, and I think increasingly this year the issues around space is. So I think we've got two topics there which are going to be of interest both to committee members, but also I think to broader inform the debate that will be going on within NATO over the coming year. Stefan, are there any points anyone wants to raise?
No, not that. Only in addition that we've been in contact with delegations, and obviously it's a very difficult situation that we try to adapt. And we are still very hopeful. And then, like everyone else in this committee and the assembly, we make the best of the circumstances.
I think the other issue which was raised at the standing committee yesterday was clearly for new members of delegations. Obviously, when we can travel and meet personally, it will be an advantage to them, not just to be able to meet committee staff, but also committee members as well. So I know speaking to one of our new delegates, a member of our delegation this morning, things are very obviously new to those individuals, but also not knowing individuals of different delegations, it does make them feel a little bit out of the loop. And as I said to a member of our delegation this morning, the sooner we can meet, I think the better those relationships which can be built, not only in terms of just doing the work on the committee reports, but obviously the dialogue which takes place outside of the committee meetings, which certainly I, and I know many other delegates, members of delegations find very helpful in not only helping the work in terms of the NATO Assembly, but also in terms of work back in their member nations. Have we got any advances?
We have actually a speaking request by Mr. Otis, and also we are informed that Susan Davis will soon join us. She's about to log on.
So could we go?
But we first have Fabrizio Otis. Can somebody bring him on, please? Mr. Otis, could you please refresh your screen, because we actually accepted you, but somehow it doesn't show up. If you refresh and then request to speak again, that should work, we think.
Yeah. Who's looking up? I haven't got any keys.
Mr. Otis, do you want to refresh and request to speak, please?
Are we still having problems, Stefan? Or?
Apparently we have, because I don't see, and I don't think you see that either, any now speaking request from him. Maybe he has technical difficulties. We got a message.
He's saying, do we hear him?
What I would suggest, in fact, maybe, Mr. Otis, if you want to put a message in the messenger and I could read it to the committee members, if you have a problem with your audio and or video. Mr. Otis will write a message and I will read it to you. So it's not audio-visual communication, obviously, but the good old writing style. Okay. Mr. Ortiz has a question when he can explain the Italian amendment proposal for the resolution. Let me just use this opportunity to say that the resolution will be discussed tomorrow. So any amendment that will be moved tomorrow will take place tomorrow. Today, as Mr. Ortiz asked, is not possible because today we only have on our agenda the discussion of the two committee reports, not of the resolution.
And I think he's come back to say that's okay, Stefan. Is that right?
Yeah, he did actually. Yeah. He understands.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure what happens with our agenda rapporteur. Let me just again remind you that some of the voting problems, or probably all voting problems that appeared, may be due to the point that you need to log in with your email address that you have been given or you gave to your SecDel and they passed on to us. Because only with that email address, when you're logged in, are you able to vote. There are obviously for each committee a limited number of votes available anyway, only. So we must make sure that everything is secure and proper. And I think that Susan Davis is now here. Perfect.
Hi, Susan.
Unfortunately, there are so many things going on here.
Yes, I can imagine.
Okay. Let me be sure that I get back to. Okay. All right. Do you want me to get started?
Yeah. Could you introduce your report on hyper weapons, please, Susan?
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Susan Davis, and I'm happy to get started. It's good to speak with you again, even if it's only digital. And let me begin by thanking everyone for attending the virtual session during these unusual times. When I presented my draft report on hypersonic weapons in September, I received a lot of helpful comments. Thank you all for that. I really appreciate it, and I know everyone does. Thank you for your suggestions. The updated draft report that I'm presenting to you today includes several changes. Specifically, I updated and expanded the section on Russia and China's hypersonic activities, as well as the research activities of other countries. Now I'd like to tell you briefly about the summary points of the draft report. Hypersonic weapons will have an important impact on our security. I argue in my draft that NATO needs to be aware of the potential of hypersonic missiles for offense and defense, that we, as NATO parliamentarians, need to be informed about the likely implications of this technology on the security of our nations. As a quick reminder, hypersonic weapons operate at speeds greater than Mach 5 or 5 times the speed of sound. There are 2 types of hypersonic missiles: hypersonic cruise missiles and hypersonic glide missiles. Many of you are familiar with that. Hypersonic cruise missiles are basically cruise missiles that fly at hypersonic speeds. They have an engine and need an air intake. Hypersonic glide vehicles do not have an engine and use their high altitude and speed to glide towards their target. They are usually launched on top of an intercontinental ballistic missile, what we know as ICBM. Combination of speed and maneuverability poses a new challenge. Hypersonic missiles bypass existing missile defenses and greatly reduce warning time for any targeted actor. In contrast to ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles are maneuverable, do not follow a predictable flight path. Hypersonic missiles can only be detected by ground-based radar late in their flight. And currently, deployed satellite-based radar or high-altitude aircraft cannot predict targets until very late in the weapon's trajectory. The draft report identifies the Russian and Chinese programs as well as those of the US. And Russia, and before it, the Soviet Union, have engaged in hypersonic research since the 1980s. The Kremlin is pursuing 2 hypersonic weapons programs. One is a hypersonic glide vehicle launched from an ICBM called Avangard, and the other is named Zircon, a ship-launched hypersonic cruise missile. The updated version of the report, I added the reference to Kinzhal, or Dagger, which is a maneuvering air-launched ballistic missile, which features a maneuverable re-entry vehicle. And because it reaches hypersonic speed, Dagger could also be described as a hypersonic air-launched ballistic missile. And the most recent Russian hypersonic missile test took place on the 6th of October. You may know that for Vladimir Putin's birthday. There also have been press reports that Russia supports India's hypersonic effort with the BrahMos system. China too is developing both hypersonic glide vehicles and hypersonic cruise missiles. And it has made great strides. We talked about this before. Its hypersonic weapons programs, according to the 2019 Munich Security Conference report, China is an unmatched leader in academic publications on hypersonic technologies. US hypersonic research is largely a reaction to Russian and Chinese efforts. In contrast to Russia, American hypersonic activities are designed to produce operational prototypes that can be used in the development of advanced tactical hypersonic weapons. And moreover, the United States is not currently considering or developing hypersonic weapons for use with a nuclear warhead. For now, US hypersonic efforts prioritize the development of short, immediate range, and conventional precision strike capabilities. In addition to China, Russia, and the United States, several other countries are developing hypersonic missile technology. Among NATO's European countries, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom have either begun pursuing research or expressed interest in their own hypersonic weapons. 3 countries outside the alliance, India, Australia, and Japan, have also embarked on the development of hypersonic missiles. In September of 2020, India conducted the first on-field test of the so-called hypersonic technology demonstrator vehicle, a hypersonic manned scramjet cruise missile. And in collaboration with Russia, India is also developing a hypersonic cruise missile titled BrahMos 2, which should achieve a speed of Mach 7. For now, experimental work in hypersonic flight is possible only for nations with highly developed research and development capabilities and sufficient financial resources. But as the example of the Russian support for the Indian project demonstrates, proliferation of hypersonic technology will be, or is already, an important issue and a concern for allies. NATO needs to evaluate the implications for NATO's defense and deterrence posture, but also for capability adoption, interoperability, and arms control and non-proliferation. I point out in the draft report that hypersonic weapons also offer opportunities for our forces. For example, conventionally armed allied hypersonic weapons could enable NATO forces to tackle the anti-access aerial denial assets of potential adversaries from afar in a conflict. And this would signal reassurance and resolve to NATO allies and thereby strengthen our deterrence. The draft report also notes that allied hypersonic weapons programs can be used as leverage in pursuing arms control agreements beneficial to the security of NATO allies. And this could be analogous to the role that NATO's double-track decision played in the negotiations that led to the INF Treaty. The draft report briefly mentions the work several NATO allies are doing on counter-hypersonic weapons technology. The US, for example, evaluates the feasibility of putting a network of sensors in low Earth orbit that would track incoming hypersonic missiles. There is also an experimental glide breaker program. Glide breaker program focuses on developing interceptors for hypersonic weapons or the development of directed energy weapons, such as lasers or microwave weapons, which would shoot down incoming hypersonic missiles. The main point of my report is that NATO allies and NATO as an organization cannot afford to ignore the hypersonic progress of Russia, China, and other nations. Hypersonic weapons could, if unmatched, provide an adversary with the means to coerce NATO allies and partners in times of crisis. NATO's Science and Technology Organization can help advance research on hypersonic technology, including propulsion systems, materials, command and control, and guidance systems. And close cooperation among our allies should be encouraged and promoted. The recommendations in the draft are the following. First, NATO as an organization needs to evaluate and discuss the implications of hypersonic weapons for deterrence, capability adoption, interoperability, and arms control. And second, NATO members should engage in the exchange of intelligence, research, designs, and encourage overall closer cooperation between the national research programs, all of which we need to stay on top of. And third, NATO should also address the issue of proliferation, of concern to many. For example, by looking to strengthen the missile technology control regime. And fourth, NATO should devise a system that would prevent the hypersonic know-how from reaching the hands of our rivals and adversaries. Before concluding, I just want to stress again that NATO and NATO allies do not want to engage in a new arms race. However, the development of hypersonic technology and the evaluation of their potential implications for offense and defense is critical to counter future threats and the threats that we already face. In closing, I want to thank the NATO PA researchers, particularly Lucas Caselius, for their support, for his support in updating this report. And I want to thank all of you for your attention, for tuning in during our very important conference this week. I am looking forward to your comments and questions. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Susan. Do we have any comments or questions for Susan?
We have a speaking request from Ukraine.
Right.
Coming on now.
Yes, thank you very much, dear participants. It's a pleasure to be here, even online. And firstly, as representative of our delegation, I want to say thank you about that our amendments to the previous report were also accepted, and now taking into account this report, it's just like to emphasize on amendment number 56. What is the position on this amendment? It's about the development and deployment of hypersonic weapon, and we suggested two variants of amendment. The topic is to emphasize that moreover than mounted and on a short-range ballistic missiles, avant-garde can pose often more challenging threat to NATO eastern flank or partner states as Ukraine. This may raise the tension in the region should Russia wish to further destabilize the situation in eastern Ukraine or Crimea, and also we suggested the second variant of this as a response times for effective countermeasures and are very short. This may raise the tension in the region should Russia wish to further destabilize it. What is the position? Are they accepted? So it's a question. Thank you. And
Thank you.
For opportunity to have this parliamentary session despite all the challenges that we have now.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments, Stefan? And request to speak?
Not at this point.
Right. Susan, do you want to respond to? You'll have to unmute yourself, Susan. That's right. Yes, we can hear you.
Can you? Okay, great. I think your points are well taken, and I think they just emphasize why we have to act really on the recommendations, and we certainly continue to work with you on those. I appreciate your involvement, and we certainly will continue to listen to you and our other partner nations in understanding unique challenges that you face along these lines as well. Thank you.
Stefan, do we have any other?
I don't see any other speaking requests, so no, we don't.
Right. Well, on that point then, can we go to the vote then? Do you want to open up the vote, Stefan?
Can we please start the vote? Should be coming up in a second. Yes. The vote on the general report. It's already up, yes.
Yeah.
So we already have 1 minute up. I think we can now close the vote.
Do we have a result yet, Stefan? Or?
Yes, you see actually a red button above the polls, and we have that everybody who voted, 9 members have adopted the report. Congratulations.
Right. So can I thank you. Can I at this point, Susan, just say to members, some members may not be aware that Susan is retired from the US Congress, so will no longer be a member of the US delegation that she's been a member of for many years. Susan, can I thank you for your work on behalf of the committee and your friendship? You've been an assiduous member of the committee and worked very hard, and always done it in a very pleasant and thoughtful way. And certainly from my point of view, as a chair, you've always been, I think, a very good colleague. And can I, on behalf of the committee, wish you all the best for the future.
Certainly. Thank you very much. And thank you for all of your support. I'll miss it.
Thank you, Susan. I'm sure you will. We'll miss you as well. Thank you, Susan. Right. I think that finishes the formal session for today. And we will reconvene tomorrow. So can I thank everyone again for their participation and wish them a good evening, and look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Thank you very much.